Good morning, everybody. Today's Sunday morning. It's Mother's Day. Can you believe that? It is a very cold Mother's Day. I'm hoping my plants and flowers and garden didn't freeze last night. So I took all kinds of measures to make sure they were covered up. But so anyway, hopefully things will be fine. And I saw a video from Van Denton on, it was actually early Saturday morning that I saw it. He went to Beech Mountain after his broadcast on Friday night, and it was about 2 a.m. He said he and his son got to Beech Mountain, and it snowed up there, and he had video of it. So check out Van Denton's Facebook page. It's pretty cool. He has some video of him at Fred's up there, if you know that area on Beech Mountain, the general store. And anyway, it's pretty cool. So, but yeah, Mother's Day, and we are going to be looking in Matthew chapter 18. I'm looking at it in reverse. It looks like 12, but it's actually 21 through 33. Like my graphics? It's pretty cool, huh? But anyway, we're going to be looking at forgiveness. We've been studying different basics in our faith as far as salvation, faith, love, forgiveness. And it's interesting today on Mother's Day, too, looking at forgiveness. So many families have been cooped up together during this time. And I'm going to try to avoid cliches like during these uncertain times, during these uneasy times, during these times. I think I repeated these times a couple of times during these times of this video. So, Mother's Day, let's move forward. We're looking at forgiveness. Hope everybody's had a good week, positive week. We officially made it to phase 1. Yay! Friday, 5 o'clock. We hit phase 1. Hopefully we can hit phase 2 on May 22nd. So we'll see. Keep praying. And we'll keep lifting each up in prayer. I pray each day for, and I'm not trying to sound like super fake Christian guy, but I do pray for our neighbors, our church family, also the folks that we work with, those who are in healthcare especially. It's important that we're safe and that we pray for each other and lift each other up. So let's get into forgiveness. While we have been in quarantine and school has been at the house, at every person's house, Joseph has been doing a lot of printing. God bless his teachers. They have been sending lessons and things, and particularly his math teacher has been sending lessons that he prints each night. And if you're like me and you like Jimmy Fallon, like to stay up late, it's around midnight. Joseph and I both are up. We're up watching TV. And at 12:01, he will print his math work for the next day. So we have a wireless HP printer. I think it's a 2005 model or something like that. It's old. It's amazing it still works. Back then it was super high tech being wireless. Magic. But we can print, as I'm looking off to the side here, you have no clue what I'm looking at, but I'm actually looking at the printer. Joseph can sit on the sofa, use his HP printer app, and it prints to the printer. It actually is a lot easier to use his printer app on his phone than it is his computer. For some reason, the computer doesn't work well with the printer. It loses connection, and we have to reset it each time. So I don't know if any of you have those problems with printers. Squirrel moment. So my point is, a while back, I tried to buy some cheap ink for the printer. It's an inkjet. It's an HP inkjet. These little things, this is one of many. It has several color cartridges that come in it, and it's tiny. But it's $18 for this little sucker. And I've tried shopping different places, and of course, I'm sure somebody that's watching this will say, I know a place where you can get it cheaper, and it's a real HP brand. But I've looked and tried. One time I got a knockoff brand that was a lot cheaper. It was like $5 for each cartridge. And the printer pretty much gummed up. In fact, I thought I was going to have to replace the printer. It just stopped working. It printed blobs whenever it was supposed to be printing photographs, and it just really gunked up the whole printer. So, my point is, for me to get good documents and good photos, I have to invest in high-quality printer cartridges. I mean, it could be the same thing with peanut butter. Have you tried knockoff peanut butter and, you're kind of like, the cats are looking at me right now. They're like, what is he doing? Is it supper time or lunchtime or breakfast time or time? But if you get knockoff peanut butter and you're kind of like, or you get the nice fancy Smucker's kind that you have to stir. That one time I broke off a wooden spoon in because you have to stir the oil in. But once you get it stirred up, it's really good. Yeah, it's if you really want a good outcome, you'll invest in it. Same thing with relationships. If you really desire to have a good relationship with somebody, you'll invest in it. And part of that is investing in forgiveness. There's going to be times if you're around somebody long enough that you're going to have disagreements, you're going to have issues. How do you handle that? And what does the Bible say? So, Matthew chapter 18, verses 21 through 22. We'll look at the first passage here. Peter is talking to Jesus. They're in an outside setting. There's several people around. Possibly the other disciples are around listening. And so Peter really wants to sound good. So he asks a question to Jesus, and he says, Then Peter approached him, being Jesus, and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? As many as 7 times? I'll tell you, not as many as 7 times, Jesus replied, but 70 times 7. Back in this culture, it was roughly a 3 strikes and you're out rule. The religious leaders had said, if somebody sins against you 3 times, after that 3rd time, you can just cut them off. It's fine. Peter, in this case, was probably trying to sound above board and say, or to go beyond that and really sound good and say, well, if it's 7 times, how about that? And Jesus then came back to him and said, 70 times 7. If you're like me and you're not too good at math, you're like pulling off your shoes, counting your toes as well. So it's a lot of numbers. So what can happen whenever we forgive somebody? Just go ahead and start off and just ask that question. What happens whenever we forgive somebody? Does it mean that we're weak? Does it mean that we have let them win? If you're like me and kind of competitive, if you like to kind of have the last word, I don't know anybody like that. I'm an anomaly. No, it's a lot of us are like that. How do you make that work? What does it look like whenever you forgive somebody? So just think about that. We have, it's funny, whenever you keep track of things, we have, or Mom's actually coined the term family. It's just kind of a group of friends and people and lots of kids. And sometimes if we're out as a group and there's food to be purchased and it's kind of hard for everybody to split it up as far as, well, I'll get 1/3 of that with my card and I'll get 2/3 of it with my card because I have more kids. A lot of times with Joseph, it just have 1 kid, so it's easy for me to buy something. But if we're as a large group, it may be just easier just for one person to use their card and buy ice cream for all the kids. So we try to keep up a system. It's like, okay, well, they bought ice cream for all the kids, so the next time I will buy pizza for the kids. And it's a loose bartering system, but we joke about it. We're like, oh, who bought the food the last time? Or I bought more food, so you owe me twice as much the next time. So, if you buy large pizzas for folks, then that equals out to 2 times of ice cream or whatever. I know the squirrel moment. I feel myself going down the trail. So, what Peter was saying was, do we keep up with it? Do we try to remember, well, who wronged me last? Or was I the person that wronged them, and then it's my turn, or is it their turn? And Jesus is saying, you don't need to stick with the details like that whenever it's forgiveness or those sort of things in this case. So, Matthew chapter 18, verses 23 through 27, Jesus says, for this reason, the kingdom of heaven can be compared to a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. Jesus liked to use parables, illustrations, letting folks know, okay, this is a story. I think some of these illustrations, these parables, were true stories. Jesus is God in flesh. He knows all situations. This could have been a real situation. But, so verse 24, when he began to settle accounts, one who owed 10,000 talents was brought before him. Since he did not have the money to pay it back, his master commanded that he, his wife, and his children, and everything he had to be sold to pay the debt. At this, the servant fell face down before him and said, be patient with me, and I will pay you everything. And the master of the servant had compassion, released him, and forgave him the loan. So, the king in this sense is like God with us. Whenever we accept Christ's death on the cross for our sins, there's no way we can earn or do well enough to earn forgiveness. Forgiveness is given to us by God, and it was ultimately a little over 2,000 years ago on the cross. And we realize that, and we admit that we're a sinner. We believe in that death, and we confess that we are sinners. And that is the basic plan of salvation right there. But forgiveness is free. In this sense, the servant, it didn't look like he put up a huge argument. He just said, I can't pay it. And the king, he knew the servant's situation. He knew that the net worth of the servant, how much was, the ox cart worth instead of the car. He probably had a lower model ox cart that was pretty used and had a lot of mileage on it. You can't get a lot out of it. Or his overall earning potential or income that he earned each year. The king knew this because this person was a servant that worked for the king, so he knew his annual income. He knew he couldn't pay it back. Just like God knows, there's nothing we can do to pay back for our total amount of sins that we've committed in our lives or will commit. So the king said, you're free. The debt is paid. You are good to go. And if you've ever had something paid for like that, I know a while back we had, and I know in healthcare, people have a lot of healthcare debt. And there was a change in hospital leadership and who actually owned the hospital, and the new owners of the hospital actually wrote off a lot of debt that had been owed to the current hospital, and we were actually part of that was written off. And so that amount, and it was not a huge amount, but it was a decent enough amount that, it's like, gosh, okay, and we had to do payments on it, and those were forgiven. And it was a big deal. This was many years ago. And some of you may have had that situation happen where a major debt was paid for, and you were happy. So the servant in this case, how does he react? Does he go out and purchase grain and oil for everybody? Hey, the grain and oil's on me, on the house. No, let's look in it. So Matthew chapter 18, verses 28, and then verses 32 through 33. The servant went out and found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. Don't get hung up in how much is a denarii worth? Is it worth 10 cents or is it worth $1.31? No, it's just money. So basically he went out and found a servant that owed him money, and he grabbed him and started choking him and said, "Pay what you owe." I don't know why I use a bad British accent whenever I read some of these characters. But then after he had summoned him, his master said to him, so he basically, the servant that had been paid, that his debt had been paid for, went and found another servant and said, you owe me this amount, and was cruel to the person that owed him money. And when the king found out about it, this is in verse 32, then after he summons him, hey, Kiki, hey, you want to say hey to the camera again? Hey, come here. Oh, boy. Yes, this is Alex. He has the red collar. Simon has the black collar. Simon's kind of shy. But anyway. So verse 32. So after he had summoned him, his master said to him, "You wicked servant, I forgave you all the debt because you begged me. Should you also have had mercy on your fellow servant as I have had mercy on you?" And ultimately, if you know this passage, the king locks up this guy. And he says, I forgave you. And now, after your hard-heartedness towards your other servant, you're going to basically, you are going to have to pay the debt in this sense. Now, theologically, let's get into eternal security. You cannot lose your salvation once you truly accept Christ as your Savior. That's in multiple scriptures, and John 10:10 and also John 3:16. If you looked at that passage, which everybody pretty much knows by heart, we know that we cannot lose our salvation. We do not become an unchild of God once we become a child of God. But there are consequences to actions, and in this case, the consequences for this person not having forgiveness towards his fellow servant. So, what are some obstacles that we have when we are put in a situation where we need to forgive somebody? One is, it's leverage. We can kind of hold it against the other person. Oh, okay, I know what you did, so now you're basically in debt to me because of what you did. Or what about whenever we've wronged somebody and it's a prideful situation and we don't want to admit that we did wrong? Well, I'm just going to just try to get that last word in and try to win the debate. I took debate in high school and I'm still taking debate now, even in my soon-to-be mid-40s. How far does that get you in life? How do you make friends and influence people or that sort of thing, with that type of attitude? Also, in this sense, how do the king's actions in this parable mirror God's actions towards us? And we've talked about it, how forgiveness is free. We just need to accept it. And how have you seen forgiveness deepen or restore your relationship with others? And it's a basic Christian principle. We as Christians have been forgiven. So we as people need to forgive others. Now, real quick, and I'm going to wrap this up in just under a minute or so. Again, forgiveness does not mean that we bow down to somebody and say that they are right no matter what. I know of situations in abuse where the person that has been abused does not need to ever be in contact with the person that abused them, but in their heart, they have to reach that level of forgiveness so that it sets them free. Not that they have to reach out to the abuser and say, hey, let's go out and get some ice cream or natties, or something like that and hang out. No, I'm not saying you have to even establish communication with somebody at all. But what you need to do in your heart is to forgive them and realize that it's something that is going to release you if you're in a hard-hearted situation. So I want to make that clear. I'm not saying go out and reach out to somebody that has wronged you and that it's not safe for you to be around that person, or it is a legitimately severe case of wronging. By the way, the cats might, speaking of wronging, you might hear some interesting noises in the background. They look like they're going to wrestle. I have 2 boy cats, and they play a lot, and they're loud when they play. They also are black, so I get black fur everywhere. I need to teach them how to vacuum. Thanks, everybody. That is the lesson for today, Mother's Day. I hope everybody has a great Mother's Day. Think about in your lives what bridges you can mend right now, especially while we are apart from each other, but we're going to be getting close to each other soon, hopefully, with all the phases and different things that are happening. But do think about that. Great passage in the Bible. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week ahead.